I always say that the largest accomplishment for me was just getting started.
Join Edwin Frondozo on the Business Leadership Podcast every week for a unique program featuring insights and actionable items from the world's most successful business leaders. Hear firsthand the exclusive interviews and personal journeys on how today's transformational leaders made it to the top.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, biz leaders. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Business Leadership Podcast. I'm excited to share this conversation I had with Marie Chevrier Schwartz. She's the founder and CEO of Sampler, the leading platform helping brands like L'Oréal and Nestlé deliver samples online and gather the insight they need to build one-to-one relationships with their consumers. Marie has been named a 2022 Marketer on the Rise by the American Marketing Association. It's an award celebrating Canada's next generation of influential leaders, giving back to the world through volunteering, inspirational leadership, and community initiatives. And on this episode, we discuss how the biggest step for any business leader, entrepreneur, or creator in anything can be just getting started and having the realization that when you get started that someone else may not always have the answer, and you'll be surprised who it is, and how asking ourselves the tough questions can be the driving force for good. This episode is brought to you by Slingshot Communication, the cloud phone service that helps you 100x your business. Without further ado, here we go. Welcome to the Business Leadership Podcast, Marie.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, I'm super excited to have you. I've been, for those who are listening, I shared with Marie right before we press record that I remember when she started her tech startup up here in Toronto, and just to have her years later to share. So I'll actually let her get into that. But Marie, can you share with the listeners a little bit something about yourself, who you are, what you do, and when you're not growing and scaling businesses?
So when I'm not growing and scaling businesses, I'm taking care of my young toddler, Dawson, who's 18 months. So that's been my husband and I's greatest pride over the last year and a half. And otherwise spending a lot of time learning and mentoring consumer packaged good brands and young female entrepreneurs in the tech industry. That's been a really nice side project to have to continue to inspire me and engage with the community. That's amazing.
I mean, you're doing many things, and it's always an inspiration to hear things, and you're coming from a powerful position, and I love, congratulations on the toddler, the new addition to the family, because it's not easy, right? Leading a business, starting a business, leading a family, starting a family as well. So I want to congratulate you and honor you on that as well, and really I want to congratulate you for being recognized as the 2022 Marketer on the Rise. I guess, what does that mean to you, receiving that from the AMA Toronto?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe it when I got the call. I always had really looked up to the AMA. The leaders that are part of that network are tremendous. They're very, very inspiring. And I had the opportunity to participate in many of their events where we would hear the stories of people who, dedicated their entire career to marketing. And it was just really, really neat to see that I was being recognized as someone that, hopefully could live up to kind of these wonderful careers that we hear about in all of these events. So I was stoked, very, very humbled. I've just, I really hope I can do the AMA honor in continuing to be on the rise and hopefully continue to develop really great solutions for the marketing industry.
Yeah, it's amazing. Congratulations. I know the AMA is is a large organization. I guess for those who aren't, who may be listening, I'm like, Edwin, can you just share us with what the AMA is? Can you, like, in a nutshell, what is the AMA and what does it mean to you as a marketer as well and being part of that community?
Yeah, so it's a network of people in the marketing industry that get together and share best practices, learn from each other. It's a volunteer-based organization, so a lot of the organizers are, people in the industry just like you and I who have a full-time role, whether it's, at Rogers doing marketing or at Grey Goose doing marketing, wherever it is. So, great Canadian companies or Toronto-based companies getting involved and supporting on a volunteer basis. And yeah, like I'd say the membership is really impressive. You can go to a dinner and end up sitting beside the founder of Bricka, which happened to me. And I was like, oh my God, like I have like all of your decor items at home. And like, here's the founder. So it's a really great peer network, really impressive individuals and in the membership and tons to learn about. They have events, I believe about monthly, both virtual and in person. So definitely recommend that if you're in marketing and advertising that you join.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, speaking about marketing and accomplishments, and you are obviously looking at people within the AMA as, inspirations and some of the legacies they've created. Marie, what would you share has been, to date, I guess, your greatest leadership accomplishments in marketing, and tell us why you think of that, and maybe why you're proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that this award is an incredible accomplishment, but I always say that the largest accomplishment for me was just getting started. I think that we need more people to ask themselves hard questions. Like, for example, the question I asked myself was, why is product sampling still done in a completely untargeted and unmeasurable way? That was the initial insight for my business. And that question could have stopped there. And I could have just went on about my day and never solved that issue. But 9 years later, I'm still on that journey to solve that same problem. And so I think getting started and then having the determination to just keep going over those 9 years in this journey to solve, because 9 years ago, e-commerce wasn't where it was, media wasn't where it is, and frankly, the market wasn't ready for my initial insight. But 9 years later, after a pandemic, after, tons of privacy concerns that are making first-party data a large priority for brands, after a supply chain crisis, after so many different industry changes that have come to impact retail and consumer packaged goods, it is the right time. And so it's a journey. And I think my largest accomplishment is getting started and continuing with that conviction.
And that's a big point. I mean, both of us are entrepreneurs. We have a startup, but I mean, as you were sharing that story about like having this idea pop up in your head or this curiosity, I was imagining being at the bar with friends, and all of us would probably say, why is it like this? And then it ends there. And as you share this, I'm like, there's like literally thousands of ideas that are getting thrown out there. It was just that you had the audacity, and maybe you had that self-belief that like, I could figure this out. Or like, where did that come from, Marie? That drive, was that not only curiosity, or is this something that you just wanted to solve, or it was just you thought it was solvable?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the question right after, why isn't it done differently, being, why isn't somebody else come up with that solution? Mm-hmm. Which I guess was kind of challenging myself to think about, well, someone would obviously have fixed this if
Right.
if it was that big of a problem, which is often where I think most ideas end, where it's like you Google quickly and you're like, oh, someone already has developed digital product sampling or something like that.
Yeah.
But I did do that, and I did realize that no one had done it, and no one had done it the right way, or the way that I thought it should be solved.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the moment that said, if no one has, why not me? And I think that I have no idea where that audacity came from, or that drive. But I do think it was a fire within me, that probably is tied to a deep passion for product sampling and marketing, and the power of product sampling. But yeah, I think it's a fire within me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. I mean, it has to come in deep, because there's a lot that comes up with those, like, if someone, why hasn't someone figured it out? Maybe it's impossible, right? And I'm just imagining things, and not to go down that that road, because it was a while ago, and you've obviously brought up a point where a lot of people will be celebrating where you are today. But where we are today, you're still celebrating 9 years ago, which is amazing, especially for those who are thinking, right? And maybe listening and sitting in on idea, right? And did that Google search and did the research and asked those questions, and they just need to jump in and start, right? I guess where I'm leading to with this as well is, you had this curiosity, this belief, maybe some audacity. Like, who inspired you? Did you have someone early around that time that really mentored you or influenced you to push you forward? Because, I mean, you did mention that you're giving back and helping women entrepreneurs, empowerment, and really providing, maybe, I'm not sure, things that you may not have had at that time. So can you share about that part of the journey of how it helped, or who helped you, or who inspired you?
Yeah. So I grew up surrounded with entrepreneurs. So my grandparents were more traditional entrepreneurs. They owned a taxi business, and then they owned like a convenience store. And my dad specifically is the hardest working individual ever, and was working alongside my grandparents, and then had it like a full-time job. And so I was always surrounded with like people who just like went to work and put their all in. And so I think that's the foundation. Like, my first job, I was 11 years old. I was babysitting, and babysitting wasn't enough. So I created, like, babysitting one family wasn't enough. I had to create the posters and get like the entire town to take my babysitting services. And when I ran out of capacity, I got like families to come together under one roof so I could babysit multiple families together. And then I like got my friends to get into the babysitting business, and got referrals from the town, and like got into the pamphlets. Like, I didn't really know how to do things half, right from the beginning. So I think that is like a discipline that I learned young. At that time in my life, I had met my then boyfriend, now husband, who also is an entrepreneur. So I think like living that with my partner as well, and like both of us being very focused on building each other, like our own businesses, was quite helpful. But yeah, so I guess I've always been surrounded by entrepreneurs and hard workers.
So really, it was your destiny to be there. So I guess, and that's, thank you for sharing it. It definitely gives me insight, and I love hearing that. It didn't start, like, Sampler wasn't your first enterprise. And the reason why I say this, so I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I love sharing stories like yours to her, right? Because anything is possible, right? And she actually had, over the summer with one of her best friends, they actually did like a yard sale in the park. And I'm just watching my daughter, 6 years old, used old toys for sale, like running around, and then the mothers would come and give them $2. They made $30, but it was it was amazing. Yeah, so I really love that story. I appreciate you sharing that. Did you ever have challenges? I guess. I guess you never really. I'm switching the question, but I guess it wasn't difficult for you 9 years ago with Sampler to actually seek out advice and mentorship, because you, I guess, being born in this sort of like kind of ingrained, because I know some first-time entrepreneurs, they have no idea where to go to look, even though the community is all around them, right? It's like,
Yeah.
is this something that was already innate with you?
No, well, so maybe the passion and the kind of some of the grit was ingrained in me, but I am building a technology company, and that was something that I had no experience doing. And I didn't have the network that much. I was lucky that 2 years before starting Sampler, I got like very lucky at landing a job with Rocket Internet, which is a VC firm that ultimately kind of incubates business ideas. So I got to work on Glossybox, HelloFresh, and another startup called Drop Gifts, which are all kind of subscription box services. Or the Drop Gifts was a gift cards business. Long story short, I spent 2 years going on a rotation across those different businesses and learning everything I needed to know about building tech businesses. And so that was really valuable. And I think like one takeaway there is like sometimes your ideas, you might have an idea, but you need to go and like gain your confidence and the skill set. So I kind of always had that idea in the back of my mind, but until I was doing that rotation, perhaps I didn't feel like I was fully ready to jump into it, or I needed a few little like reminders or frameworks. So yeah, so that was really helpful for me. And then I did really lean into the Toronto tech community. My 2 years were in New York, but I went back to Toronto to spend time with the Toronto community and build Sampler there. And the amounts of resources I got from the Ryerson DMZ, from Mars, from at the time there was a program called Startup Boost. I really got involved with the community and looked to build a really strong peer group. And there's a lot of people out there that are part of these organizations offering free advice and mentorship. So I had quite the community around me, but I had to seek it and participate in these types of groups.
Yeah, that's amazing, and thanks for sharing. And that sounds like a really good, like it's almost like you're in an internship, going in different startups and that rotation, and that's really helpful. And I wonder if there's different scenarios like those for not wannabe entrepreneurs, but those who strive but want that exposure to different startups. I mean, that was a really helpful scenario. I mean, I wish I had that. I'm just thinking like, oh, how do I apply to that? I mean, I wouldn't now, but I mean, at the time, that would have been great. Definitely shout out to the DMZ and Mars and Startup Boost and the Toronto ecosystem. I know for those, a lot of you guys know I'm in the Toronto area, and this is I love spotlighting and profiling people in the Toronto. We'll definitely put the links in the show notes below as well if you guys are keen or interested to see what Marie was talking about. I'm curious right now, Marie, as you've progressed in your career now, and I'm sure you've worn different hats, everything from doing everything to, building the team around you and a super team to allow you to grow and scale. So what are you currently working on? What are some of the challenges or the things that you're trying to work on? Maybe it's business related, maybe it's a personal practice that allows you to continually grow as a business leader, as a person, as a human. Anything that you could share with us today?
Yeah, I think I'm still today trying to grow as a leader, in understanding like where I can add the most value to the team, how I can empower the team in the best ways, building an executive leadership team has been such a game changer for me. We put our current leadership team in place just over 3 years ago now, and it has empowered me to be executing at a level that's really, really fun. As a leader, going through the different phases of leadership, from, being on the execution side versus kind of now being at a point where I have an executive team, which now we've put into place about 3 years ago, has allowed me to execute at a completely different level where I am just more focused on the strategy side of the business, focusing on kind of large key initiatives versus potentially being really in the weeds. Having said that, it's really easy to get pulled back into the weeds. And I think, frankly, a bit of a necessary part of the role as the CEO, when I get the opportunity to go deep. And for example, I spent last week really, really involved with my partnerships team on a few sales conversations we're having with large partners, and traveling with my head of partnerships to hearing firsthand from him, the feedback that we're receiving from the partners, seeing the partners interact with the platform, seeing their feedback. Like nothing replaces that, right? So I think that what I've learned is that the best leaders have a really unique ability to go from big picture to into the weeds. And to do that in a way that is, collaborative and trusting to the team. And I think that's the challenge, but also like really the big opportunity. And I think that learning how to do that well is my focus right now.
Yeah, so that's amazing. And just to recap, is like literally coming from the strategic, where the company is moving, down to the exciting part, to the ground, right, where the action is happening. Like I think that's I could, as you're explaining it, I could feel the energy of just being on the ground, and some of the collaborations and the opportunities and the partnerships that's being created with with the organization, the teams that you've created, and you get to contribute, right, as well as being a contributor, and not just someone who's you are steering the ship, but also a team player as well, right? So that's amazing. I do appreciate that, because I do, talking to a lot of business leaders, there's always that, sometimes, if you're a developer, sometimes you miss being a developer, right? Because you move up and you're like, oh, I just want to work on something. And,
I just want to edit marketing copy. Like that's what gets me going. You just want to pick the next tagline.
That's fun though, right? Like that's super fun.
It's selling. I love selling. So like, to be honest, like the last week was a trade show, and I'm going to a trade show this week, and I come back from those like so energized, because I got to hear someone say, wow, this solution really changed the way I think about sampling. Like your solution helped me solve X. And, that's what we all live for. We start these companies to solve this big problem. And so we need to refuel as founders and go hear that passion.
Yeah. Hey, it feels nice. It feels nice. and it's okay, right? For the leaders, entrepreneurs out there, it's okay to like indulge in that as well, because if you don't come down and always worrying about what else has to be done, it's sort of like self-care as well, right? Like going to there as well and getting that energy, I think. And I think it's important, especially for the leaders and the executives who don't go down to these events anymore, man. Even if you just go for one day and check it out, it's nice to get out of your own, silo and have.
Yeah. And for the teams too, like I don't want to speak for them, but I do hear like often that, my sales folks will say like, it's so cool. I get to like go pitch sampler with the founder. Like I could just be like, it's like, here's Marie, and like here, like tell the story together and like feel that energy together, and then spend time together, get that FaceTime. So
yeah, it's FaceTime. Yeah. It's a style of mentorship. I mean, you're able to, and like you said, it's an opportunity for your team to be with, with you, and to learn from you, right? Because there's your team is like, how big is your team now?
About 40 teammates.
Yeah, so it's growing, right? And
yeah.
And it's soon you won't be able to get to everyone, right?
That's right.
I guess one thing I love asking, especially those who are still in, gravitating from strategy down to the weeds, and learning family and communication. What are you reading right now? What's on your bedside table?
Yeah, so I'm actually reading Mission in a Bottle. It's a book that Seth Goldman and, I'm going to mess up his name, Barry Nailbuff, wrote, but they are the founders of Honest Tea. So Honest Tea is a tea company that actually just got acquired, but they tell the story about how they came about the insight for Honest Tea after a run in Central Park, where they wanted to go and take a quick drink. And when they got to the coffee shop, they saw that there was only the no sugar tea and the full sugar tea, but nothing in between. And so they found a gap in the market in the beverage industry, and it's grown to be one of the most loved brands. And now one of them actually started Beyond Burger. Or Beyond Meat. So another brand that obviously, found a niche in the market. So yeah, it's really neat. And I didn't know this until I ordered it, but it actually is all like
comic
animation comic.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, different read. But highly recommend. So I'm not so far in, but I love to hear founding stories and the challenges of, that people go through and just commiserating. So so far so good.
You're so funny. You are such a student of entrepreneurship that even on your off time, you're reading more about entrepreneurs. It's amazing.
Yeah. I don't know if it's amazing or
a sickness
or bad or psychotic. I don't know, like something not normal about that. But
I interview guys, so it's definitely
no, the reality is I do read fiction on my mobile or on my Kindle, but if I'm going to pick up a book, it's usually a business book because I can refer back to it.
Yeah, 100%. I'm having a blast, Marie. This is great. Thank you for all the stories. I'd love it before we end, if you could, share some final thoughts, observations, ideally some actionable recommendations for the, whether they're the entrepreneur, the business leader, the creator who's listening today, something that they could take away and work with.
Yeah. I mean, if you're thinking about a business idea, I hope I inspired you to get started. Again, it doesn't take much. I had an initial insight. I had some, a background in marketing, not a background in technology. So all of the excuses you're making for yourself as to why you're not the right person to build that business are completely non-valid. If you can have the determination towards a mission, I bet you could do it. And if I can be of any help, add me on LinkedIn, Marie Chevrier Schwartz. I'd be glad to connect you with any of the organizations I listed or to help personally if I could. But yeah, just get started and don't be afraid. You definitely have what it takes.
Awesome. To close, Marie, can you tell us where we could find more information about you, your company, or anything else you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, Sampler gives free samples. So that's a pretty good proposition. So it doesn't matter who you are. Everybody loves free product samples. So I invite you to go to sampler.io. So sampler.io. At the top right, you'll see a button that says Get Free Samples, or maybe it's in the middle now. Anyways, you'll see the Get Free Samples button, fill a profile, and you'll get matched with free stuff. We'll ship it to your home completely for free.
Amazing. Marie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us on the Business Leadership Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's it, Biz Leaders. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Business Leadership Podcast. This was episode number 179 with Marie Chevrier Schwartz. For more information about Marie, Sampler, or any other resources that we shared, go to thebusinessleadership.com/179 or simply slide into the show notes of the podcast player that you are using. If you haven't done so yet, please give the show a follow, rate, and leave a review. It actually helps other biz leaders like you find this show. This episode was brought to you by Slingshot Communication, the business leader's preferred cloud phone service. What I really love about the service is that I'm able to expand and grow 100x by allowing the systems in place transform my business and my personal life. I have the ability to have a dedicated business SMS, and it's changed the game. I could contact my clients, my team members, my stakeholders via traditional text messages, SMS, using an app, and in after hours, on weekends, it allows me to shut it off so I don't get interrupted and I'm allowed to stay present with my family. So to learn more, please go to thebusinessleadership.com/SMS. Until next time, do your best and have a 100x day.
Thank you for listening to the Business Leadership Podcast at thebusinessleadership.com.